You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
This is a piece that's done with a little melodrama, a little music underbedding it. And I think that what CNN is doing is trying to point up to an unsuspecting and a young group of people who were not even alive during the time of Nixon's presidency, but have heard about it in the aftermath, and those who were alive to see how eerily similar Trump and Nixon are. But so, Mr. Engineer, run this, and I'm going to let this run because I think it'll give us a little bit of a background going forward for what I think Robert Mueller's going to release against Trump in not too many days.
If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way.
President Donald Trump's rhetoric about the Russia investigation might seem unprecedented. But over 40 years ago, President Richard Nixon used similar tactics to defend himself against Watergate.
I believe the time has come to bring that investigation and the other investigations of this matter to an end. 1 year of Watergate is enough.
There are many differences. Trump is not Nixon, and the Russia investigation is not Watergate. But both scandals led to the departure of senior officials, dozens of criminal charges, and allegations of a cover-up.
I had no prior knowledge of the Watergate break-in.
Nixon, much like Trump, always relished the opportunity to publicly proclaim his innocence.
I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
When you talk about innocent, I am truly not involved in any form of collusion with Russia, believe me. That's the last thing I can think of to be involved in.
President Nixon touted his cooperation with investigators, as did President Trump.
As far as the investigation, nobody has ever been more transparent than I have instructed our lawyers. Be totally transparent. I believe we've given them 1.4 million pages of documents.
I have provided to the special prosecutor voluntarily a great deal of material. I believe that I have provided all the material that he needs to conclude his investigations and to proceed to prosecute the guilty and to clear the innocent.
Both presidents later shifted their approach and went on the attack. They argued that the probes distracted from the real issues, and they distanced themselves from key players wrapped up in the investigation.
I first learned from news reports of the Watergate break-in. I was appalled at this senseless, illegal action.
It doesn't implicate me in any way. There was no collusion, there was no obstruction, there was no nothing.
But now we must move on from Watergate to the business of the people. And the business of the people is continuing with the initiatives we began the first administration.
They ought to get to the end of it because I think the American public is sick of it.
Both Nixon and Trump fired the people overseeing their respective investigations, Archibald Cox and James Comey, raising questions of obstruction of justice.
In all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice.
There was no obstruction. I mean, unless you call obstruction the fact that I fight back, I do fight back. I really fight back. I mean, if you call that obstruction, that's fine. But there's no obstruction.
Let us not allow what a few overzealous people did in Watergate tar the reputation of the millions of dedicated Americans of both parties who fought hard but clean for the candidates of their choice in 1972. I wanted to be sure that
Nixon often seethed about the leaks of private information. He felt the FBI could not be trusted and said it was filled with leakers trying to undermine him. Trump also railed against the so-called deep state inside the Justice Department.
Unelected deep state operatives who defy the voters to push their own secret agendas are truly a threat to democracy itself.
You see, the thing is that there's a lack of discipline over there at the present time. leakers, Mr. President?
We're going to find the leakers. We're going to find the leakers. They're going to pay a big price for leaking.
All right, I thought you would, find that a bit interesting. I think it's a little dramatic in terms of its presentation, but drawing the similarities, and I think the attempt there by CNN was to draw the similarities and say that the ultimate will be as well, that whatever happened to Nixon is also going to happen to Tribulation Trump. But let's just examine a couple of things. The number one is that Nixon was more of a statesman and a much more seasoned politician than Tribulation Trump will ever be. And there was only one issue with Nixon, and that was at least one that was legally pursued, and that was the break-in at the Watergate Hotel regarding the Democratic Convention's headquarters and sopping up their information so that they would be able to know how to counter information regarding the next election of the Democrats. Now, hold on to that thought for just a second, right? Hold on to that thought for just a second, that the Watergate burglars broke into the Watergate Hotel for the purpose of stealing the secret plans or the plans that the Democrats had in the upcoming presidential election, right, for Nixon's second term. They thought that if they could get that information, they would know how to defeat Nixon's opponent and win the election by the information that they received, right? Now hold that thought. If you've been following the Manafort story or event or episode and Trump's using Manafort as his campaign manager, one of the things that has not been adjudicated in the Manafort issue is that Manafort met with Konstantin Kilimnik at the Havana cigar place off Madison Avenue, a very ritzy cigar and red meat steak place. And Manafort turned over 47 pages of polling information from the Trump administration on Clinton's, her pursuit of the presidency. Information that Trump's organization had gathered, turned it over to Russia, to Konstantin Kilimnik, right? Now, we know that's been documented. It's been documented. It's a part of court proceedings. However, there's not been an official charge brought against Manafort. That still might just come. But my point is the similarities. If what Nixon did and hiring the Watergate burglars to get this information on the Democrat Party by breaking into the Watergate Hotel and the Democrat Party's national headquarters convention to get their information so they could defeat the Democrat candidate, how much more so did the same thing happen at that restaurant there with Manafort and Konstantin Kilimnik when he handed over information on Hillary Clinton about in the 2016 election, which then gave Trump the opportunity to be able to defeat Hillary Clinton. Those two are very similar. Now, I notice that that's not always something that's brought up into a comparison. That's number one. Number two is that with respect to this whole matter of Trump and Nixon only had one issue, that was a Watergate break-in, but Trump has a multiplicity. Trump has more nearly 1,700 legal cases or pending cases, everything from paying off porn stars or cases with respect to his foundation, his insurance businesses, banking. Not only is there the matter of the political collusion or the political conspiracy to commit collusion, but Trump has a plethora, nearly 1,000 different items coming in here. So it's overwhelming what Trump has. You can't even think about it. There's so much going on. But I think the other thing is that we need to realize is that, and number three, is that Trump, before becoming president, unlike Nixon, who's been a politician all his life, Trump was running a criminal enterprise that really nobody paid very much attention to out of the Trump Tower. The Trump business, since Fred Trump, his father, had given that money, Trump set up what was known as a criminal enterprise, or what is known and what can be investigated now, from insurance fraud to money laundering to stiffing people to bankruptcies. I mean, and just doing all kinds of mafioso type of techniques with people that he dealt with. So he was running a criminal enterprise, right? Is what Trump was doing. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.